Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Tech Talk with Bill Baer. My name is Dan Holm. I'm the co-founder and CEO of IT Unity, and I'm joined, as always, by the amazing and marvelous Mr. Bill Baer, Senior Technical Product Manager for Microsoft. Good morning, Bill.
How's it going, Dan?
I'm great. How are you up in Seattle these days?
Doing good. The weather's been friendly, so
Right on. Well, it's been kind of hot here. I know Reiner was saying it's been hot in Germany, but we'll keep the small talk to a minimum because we've got some hot news for everyone that came out at WPC about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, Bill. And why don't you share it officially with our audience?
yeah. So at WPC, just about a week ago, week and a half ago, Seth, our senior director of OneDrive and SharePoint marketing, announced that next month, ahead of schedule, we'll be landing SharePoint Server 2016 preview in addition to our cloud search service application preview. So we've got two great launches ready for our community next month. The first being the preview release of SharePoint Server 2016. That's going to be great in itself, but then the cloud search service application for SharePoint Server 2013. So at Ignite, we discussed how, as a component of our new hybrid vision, we want to enable organizations to take advantage of Office 365 innovation. And one of the first things that we demonstrated that we were working on is the ability to take content that resides on-prem and then expose it through Office Delve and the Office Graph. And we also announced that not only will that be an embedded capability of SharePoint Server 2016, but we'll also make it backward compatible with SharePoint Server 2013. And that's what this preview release is going to be about. So it's going to be pretty awesome that you're going to be able to take advantage of the Delve, the Office Graph experience with your on-premises content with 2013, as well as within the preview release of 2016 itself.
That's phenomenal, Bill. And on episode 7, about I think 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago, you and Neil showed off the cloud search service application as it supported SharePoint 2010 on-prem as well, by having a single SharePoint 2013 server acting as a proxy for the cloud search service application. Will that use case be supported during the preview as well?
Yeah, definitely will. So for the 2013 update that you'll get next month, all you have to do is stand up a single server running 2013 with the August PU installed on it, and you'll be able to take advantage of that and index your 2010 content and push that through as well.
Oh, that's fantastic news. Or as Ryan said, preview-tastic. I like that word. All right. So Bill, so tell us a little bit about the current state of SharePoint as we head into preview. Obviously, that means the code is in a good place. Tell us about what's going on behind the scenes that got us to this point.
Yeah, I think, as we kind of sit down and think about how we want to stage releases for the community to take advantage of, one of the key aspects of preview for us, or one of the drivers of why we want to do a preview, is really to solicit feedback and validate the stability of builds incrementally as we move forward with this release. So in the past, with prior versions of SharePoint, the TAP program was largely what we used to solicit feedback, identify bugs and issues within a particular product. And then preview was an opportunity for our community to get their hands on the bits, but it was largely a kind of self-sustained effort, and at least in respect to how conversations were managed around preview. With SharePoint 2016 preview, the idea is we could expand the breadth of feedback that we receive as we continue to develop 2016. So in particular with this release, we're going to have some forums available to you that our engineers will participate in. We'll still continue to look at user voice, and in addition, we'll continue to follow social media, using our @SharePoint Twitter handle. But the key thing is we really wanted to use this as an opportunity not only to solicit feedback from our community related to the preview, but kind of broaden the scope of the TAP program. So effectively, you can consider all of you now are TAP customers of ours. So we're actively engaged. We're looking at the feedback. We're monitoring the conversations, and we're trying to understand what's working and what's not working, So as we progress into future releases, we can take that feedback and build it into the product. So this is really a feedback-driven product. As we talked about at Ignite and even prior to Ignite, SharePoint 2016 is really built on the feedback of the community. So this is just one more opportunity for us to garner feedback as we progress through the cycle of releases.
That's really exciting. So basically, what has been sort of a finished product, so to speak, by the time it got to beta. In other words, the feedback cycle was so short, there wasn't really time to incorporate as much and as broad a set of feedback. This time, we're really all going to be helping drive the quality of the final product.
All right. So with the way that we're managing the preview release as we move forward is by providing access to preview early. It does a couple of things. One, it enables us to solicit that feedback over a longer duration. So as you stated, generally one of the things that tends to happen is the time between a preview release or a release candidate and actual RTM is generally pretty short. So there's only so much we can do in between those particular releases. But by shipping preview next month, one of the things that we're able to do is actually extend the duration of the feedback period so we can really make real progress on what you're looking to find in SharePoint Server 2016. But even beyond that, bugs as well, something that we can address. So we can do that at scale by shipping preview next month. Now, obviously, we do a great deal of testing internally, but again, we're limited by the resources that we have available to do that testing. But by releasing a preview ahead of schedule, we're able to have a broader audience effectively do a lot of that bug testing or validation for us, so we can take those bugs and we can turn them into actionable feedback.
That's awesome, Bill. And I assume because this is really about getting a longer period of customer feedback, that leads to what a lot of people have been asking, which is, does this mean the final product of SharePoint 2013 is going to be released earlier as well? It sounds like it's really about bringing the preview closer to give us that long tail of feedback.
Right. Our overall release schedule doesn't necessarily change. Even though we're shipping preview ahead of schedule, it doesn't change our overall release schedule. So, we're not condensing our milestones. We're just extending the period between milestones again, so we can have actionable feedback. And, the important takeaway around that as well is, the expectation is in the past a preview release was largely representative of almost a feature complete release of the product. So if you think back to prior release candidates, they, to a certain extent, they were close to being 80-90% feature complete. With preview, the way that we can kind of manage that is we can focus on our initial interim investments, which were largely infrastructure and developer driven, and then incrementally advance those releases to add experiences or to add some compliance capabilities. So.
It leads to a question that we're getting really regularly, which is what exactly will be included in the preview? And you've just mentioned that it's not necessarily feature complete, but what can we expect on day one of the preview next month?
Yeah, I think one of the key things is again, it kind of harkens back to what we talked about at Ignite. One of the initial areas of focus were the core infrastructure investments. Because SharePoint 2016 is the first release that was born in the cloud, it's also one of the first things that we focused on is again taking what we've learned from running the product at scale and then turning that knowledge into code. So you can anticipate that that's going to be kind of one of the core areas of 2016 preview. So a lot of the things that we talked about at Ignite being available in the preview. And if you could just bear with me for 1 second, Dan. Sure, I'm gonna try something here.
I like when Bill tries something on the fly. That's usually something good.
As soon as I can figure out.
Spinning that up, I'm definitely watching your questions in the chat, and we will be capturing those. Those are great questions. Lyman, I wonder if by chance we might be able to make the chat a little bit bigger, taller today. It's definitely a very active chat. That's awesome. Thank you. And by the way, while Bill's spinning that up, among the things that we're going to have an opportunity to experience in the preview is Mineral. And I think it was episode 6 of Tech Talk with Bill Baer. We had Bill show us Mineral. So that's definitely going to be part of our experience with the preview. So definitely check that out and get feedback on that. The cloud
Okay, Dan,
search
I'm gonna
service
have to.
mentioned, episode
I'm gonna
7.
have to ask you a question.
Yep.
How do I share my screen?
You want to share something? I'll let you share something. Actually, Lyman, do we have a layout for that? Or do you want me to just add? There we go. Our fearless producer in the back switching us into a mode.
Awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and share my desktop.
I can't wait. I don't know what.
Hopefully everybody can
I'm
see.
excited.
So can you see that, Dan?
Yeah. Is this what we're going to be getting?
Okay, so great. So here we are sitting inside of central administration, inside of a build of SharePoint Server 16, and kind of, like I said, one of the things that initially happened, with the 2016 release is kind of really focusing down on that infrastructure cloud down accrual. So, one of the advancements that we talked about that everybody seemed to enjoy was the fact that, finally in the release history of SharePoint, you're no longer relegated to 2 GB file uploads. So, here's a great example of which. So as you can see, I'm in central administration. I can go to general settings for my web application. I can come down, scroll through the page, and down here, as you can see, here's my maximum upload size. Today it's set to 1 GB. Here's the beauty part. You were never able to do this before. To 5. Click OK, and voila, look at that. It took it. It accepted it. So it gave me, no warning or anything that I'm going to be relegated to 2 GB. Now I am at 5. Perhaps, I want to take it, even bigger. I can do that as well. So, and there you go. So, that's kind of, just thinking about some of the stuff that we're focused on, it's largely driven by those infrastructure investments that we want to be able to make. I'm looking to one of the questions here around SharePoint development solutions and FTC.
So now everyone the ISOs of their movies into SharePoint. Little note, everyone, remember your default quota on your site collections is 0, meaning infinite. So might be time to start thinking about adding some governance around quotas in your environment.
Yeah.
If your secret packet isn't ready for those unlimited file sizes. There are a couple of questions in the chat here. You want to tackle the one? Go ahead and repeat the one on development and tackle that if you want.
Oh yeah, so I was looking at the one. There's kind of the question as to whether or not full trust code would be deprecated, and I know that's kind of been one of the big aspects, or at least, or around speculation that we would, in some way, shape, or form, deprecate full trust code in favor of the cloud app model, because that's generally the direction that Office 365 has moved in. And one of the most important aspects of SharePoint over the course of its history has been its extensibility. So, when we talk to customers, one of the key things that they talk about in respect to SharePoint's value is not just the breadth of capability that SharePoint provides, spanning Power BI, collaboration, enterprise content management, records management, but also one of the kind of core things that our customers enjoy around SharePoint is that aspect of extensibility. So, what I can say is we don't have any plans to deprecate or remove full trust code from SharePoint on premises anytime in the near future. We understand how important it is to our customers to have FTC as a capability, and that extensibility is important. Now, generally, kind of the way we recommend leveraging full trust code is that, full trust code initially with SharePoint was really designed to give developers an opportunity to extend the product, and then that just created an ecosystem unto itself. And the way we look at full trust code is for lightweight customizations, in particular branding. There's a lot of other ways that you can do that on premises that's more conducive of facilitating smooth upgrades, and generally that would be through the cloud app model. But if you really want to extend the capabilities, you're going to have full trust code available to do that. So if you're doing something, where Workflow Manager or Workflow Foundation just doesn't facilitate your workflow needs, obviously there's FTC that you can leverage to supplement, anything that can't happen out of the box. So it's not going anywhere. It's going to be available to you in SharePoint 2016. You're going to find a broader server OM, largely because there's more features, so the server OM naturally grows in parallel to those features. So there's a ton of FTC opportunity available in SharePoint 2016 and beyond.
Randy promises he's going to screw up his 2016 environment completely with FTC with full trust customizations. That's awesome. Hey, Bill, there was a question earlier that I'd like to tackle and make sure we get this one out, which is clearly with this preview, we now have a model where we're getting a product that has that reflects all of the core investments in infrastructure, things like Mineral, things like unlimited file size uploads. And then that implies that additional features, and you actually said, additional features will be added on during the course of the preview. There are a number of questions on specific features which we can get to later, but I'd like you to address the question that someone asked earlier in the chat. And that is, does this imply that this might be an actual model moving forward past general availability? Does this mean that that we can expect features to sort of reach a new cadence? Is there any thought or announcement on that?
I don't know if that's something that
sort of
we necessarily do. It's definitely something that we've there's obviously we look at a lot of different things throughout the course of development and different ways that we can sustain or service a product. And for us, I don't think we're at that point yet to where we can make that kind of decision or any kind of announcement around that particular type of model. We're still largely early in the development cycle. Considering we're not accelerating our release schedule. We're still shipping in early 2016 as we announced at Ignite. So we're still a long way from being to RTM in the grand scheme of things. Effectively, a period of 8 or 9 months is a lifetime in product development, and a lot of different things can happen in between. But really what our kind of core focus is today is landing this preview in the right way that enables the community to kind of drive not only validation, but just pure feedback, against that preview. So I'd say one of the key things that we're trying to do is understand what's working, what's not working, and what can we do to even make it better. So like I said, we've got this tacit goal to really be community focused on this particular release, and preview is our first step in that direction. And then, we can take that feedback, and much like we've taken our own knowledge and turned it into code, we can take that feedback and potentially turn it into code as well.
Fantastic. Now, and I'd like to highlight the fact that this preview sounds like it's going to have pretty much everything in it that you described at Ignite. All of those IT features that people were getting excited about, those are actually in the preview, which means you actually do have probably some things up your sleeve between now and GA that you haven't even talked about yet, which is pretty cool, huh?
Oh yeah, we've still got a lot of work ahead of us and a lot of exciting things that we're actually working on. And this is indicative of that first set of things that we knew were done. So at Ignite, when we talked about some of the investments that we're making, those were investments that we're not making, but we've already made. And that's kind of what we talked about at Ignite. So if you think about some of the IT Pro features we talked about, resources, those were investments that we've made, and that's kind of the low-hanging fruit is an easy way to say it, because when you build the product, you build the infrastructure. So those are naturally the first investments that you're going to make, and then as you move forward, that's when you start to think about putting experiences on top of the infrastructure. So you have to have a foundation, no pun intended, before you can build the house on top of it. So you can think of all the experiences that SharePoint provides that the users find valuable as being the house, and the IT Pro infrastructure and developer related investments as being the foundation. So the foundation gets built first, and then the house gets built on top of it. And really what happens is your foundation defines what your house is going to look like, because you're going to build within its confines.
That's awesome. So as far as the preview goes, one of the other features you discussed at Ignite that I'd like to call out is the hybrid configuration. Is that going to be ready for us to play with in the middle of August when the preview hits?
And from a hybrid perspective, you'll see some of those early investments. Obviously the cloud search service application for 2013 is indicative of one of those. It's a native app. It's a native component of 2016, and that's kind of what we talked about at Ignite. Is we initially announced that, hey, in SharePoint Server 2016, you're going to be able to take advantage of Delve and the Office Graph through your on-premises content, And then we also announced we'd make it available to 2013. So 2016 is just a native aspect. 2013, it's an update. And so you'll find some early investments from a hybrid perspective as well. Just to answer a quick question in the chat as I look down there at that, Rainer asked about the minimum number of servers for a full development farm. Now, while we did, announce that we are removing or making obsolete the single server farm installation or the standalone installation, MinRoll supports a single server farm, which is effectively the replacement for standalone. The only thing that doesn't come with the single server farm is SQL Express. So, standalone installations were always defined by installing SharePoint in addition to SQL Express as your database server. And single server and MinRoll installs everything that standalone used to, absent SQL Server Express. So you can just install SQL on the machine and then install SharePoint using the single server role on top of it. So you can still do, single machine SharePoint environments for development and evaluation purposes. It's just one of those things.
Awesome. So answer to Reiner's question is the minimum dev server farm is 1 still, just configured a little bit differently. What about patching and updates? Will we start seeing some of the benefits of the new patching model that you've been describing with the light up ice cubes?
Yeah, so from a patching perspective, anything from a core infrastructure perspective, the code paths are generally there. Will you be able to take advantage of it's another question, because generally we don't ship cumulative updates for preview releases. It's kind of a static release in which you have a preview and that preview remains static until you have a beta 2 or a release candidate, and that remains static until you have a release. And then after the release is when you start to see the servicing come in. So that's probably not going to be one of the things that you'll be able to initially experience from a preview perspective.
There was
tons of questions
about the dev environment, which is what about Office web apps? What is the story if someone's working with SharePoint 2016 preview and wants to take advantage of Office web apps? I actually don't know that. What's the deal with that?
Yeah, and that's a good question. That's probably not one that I can answer, since I'm not directly engaged on a day-to-day basis with that particular team. They sustain their own releases and their own release cadence, so it's not one that I could speak to. I don't want to put words in their mouth or say anything that may be incorrect related to what their release cadence looks like. But so yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good question. It's just one that I don't have an answer to, because it's just not related to what we do overall in
sure. And there's a great little follow-up question there, which is it at all possible to take advantage of Office web apps online within the on-prem SharePoint 2016 farm?
And that's another one that we haven't we haven't discussed or talked about. I wouldn't say it's not something we're not looking into, but at the same time, it's not something that we've either committed to either. So it kind of turns into one of those I can neither confirm nor deny, just because we don't have an answer for it. We're definitely focused on hybrid enrichment and creating great experiences from a hybrid perspective. That obviously sounds a lot about hybrid, but kind of the core areas that we're looking at is baby steps first. Crawl before you walk, before you run. Crawling is, again, no pun intended. That's our first hybrid release. So, crawl, walk, run. We started with crawl, and we're delivering crawl. And then we'll move our way into walk, which is some of the other investments that we talked about. So we're really trying to deliver a broad array of hybrid experiences, and then we get to run to where we can really drive those. Now, one of the other things that Seth announced at WPC was just the fact that in addition to the hybrid crawl experience that you're going to have available to you next month, you'll also have a new hybrid resource center available to you as well inside of Office 365 administration that enables you to quickly and programmatically configure hybrid scenarios. So it really minimizes the scope of effort required to instantiate a hybrid deployment.
So one other infrastructure-related, a couple of infrastructure-related questions. One is, in SharePoint 2013, there was this document limit of 250 million for search. is and in SharePoint 2016, it's been announced that you're hitting 500 million. How is that being achieved? How are we overcoming the 64K components?
Yeah, so one of the things that we talked about at Ignite, and for those that didn't see it, it's in the resource link for the IT professional session, is we had a slide on boundaries and limits, and a lot of which we've exponentially, one of which was the large file upload. So the max file size increases substantially to enable you to upload larger files. And that's just indicative of the way people work today with the prevalence of digital media kind of replacing textual representation of content through Word documents and PowerPoint presentations. The next thing we talked about was list view threshold. I saw a couple of comments on that. What's it going to be? And that's a great question. We're advancing it. We talked about how we're going to advance it at Ignite. Do we have a firm number today? The answer to that would be no. And the easy, way to kind of justify why we don't know exactly what that number is going to be is because of testing. We have to get to a point to where we stabilize builds before we can actually perform any scale testing, because scale testing today wouldn't be indicative of what RTM is, because you need to have a product that's representative of what you're going to release, because that's what all scale is going to be based on from a customer's perspective, is the released product and not, a pre-release build. So what I encourage you to do is when you get your hands on preview, start pushing some of these boundaries. So get your scripts ready to create large lists and tell us what you're hitting. And let us know, what kind of boundaries you're running into. And, we can look at it and take that feedback and, move forward with it. For the search question is how do we, effectively double the scale of search? It's just all around how we've revised the search architecture. So you're going to find a renewed search architecture that's not only easier to deploy, but easier to manage. And all of our code paths, kind of as an effective mineral, have been optimized for particular workloads. So, we talked about how the web front end is optimized for throughput and application servers for low latency, and search servers obviously have been optimized too. So we can definitely do a lot more around scale, and that's kind of one of the big areas of investment that we talked about at Ignite was, we're definitely focused on scale.
And one last infrastructure question, and then there have been a bunch of questions on features that I'd like to turn to, but the last infrastructure question is about Workflow Manager. Are there any changes to what we'll see in Workflow on the back end for SharePoint 2016?
From a workflow perspective, it seems to come up every day. We talked about it, in at Ignite and some other places, which is effectively we're going to carry forward a lot of the capability of Workflow Manager and Workflow Foundation to SharePoint Server 2016. Obviously there's going to be fixes in Workflow Manager that resolve, some of the key issues. But, in terms, that's kind of the way that we're thinking about enhancing that, is really addressing a lot of the feedback we've received around Workflow Manager. Similarly, as we talked about at Ignite, if you think about something like distributed cache, it's not going to fundamentally be different, but it's going to be better. And the reason it's going to be better is because we've been able to identify, challenges with something like distributed cache, be it high availability and disaster recovery or performance, from running it at scale as a component of SharePoint Online, and then we've been able to fix those issues and subsequently bring those fixes back to SharePoint Server 2016. So that's going to be another one as well.
All right, we'll do one more infrastructure question. Then, folks, I really want to move on to some future questions that were earlier, and that is the question about and I'll broaden the question. Are there any challenges that you expect people to be facing as they test upgrading from SharePoint 2013 to SharePoint 2016? I'll break the question into a couple of parts. First, I assume the upgrade model is essentially the same as 2013, where you're doing a database attach upgrade, and I'll let you confirm that. And then secondly, are there any particular rough edges that you imagine people need to watch out for? For example, Josh's question on search customizations, display templates, and such.
Yeah, so from an upgrade perspective, a little bit kind of just to recap again of what we talked about back in May, is there's effectively two ways to get to SharePoint Server 2016. One would be upgrading from SharePoint 2013. The other is migration, just moving content from some other platform or earlier release of SharePoint. So effectively, the prerequisites are you're running SharePoint Server 2013, and all of your sites have to be upgraded to 15 modes. So we won't support 14, 14 and a half mode site collections. Effectively backward compatible or deferred site collection upgrade site collection. So you have to bring them all to 2013 mode from 2010 mode as a first step for upgrade. Now, from an upgrade itself, we anticipate that the upgrades are going to be relatively smooth. And this kind of comes back to our convergence story. So if you think about the Genesis block of SharePoint Server 2016, it was born in the cloud as the result of SharePoint Online. SharePoint Online was subsequently born from SharePoint 2013. So as you can see, there's kind of this evolutionary path that leads us to SharePoint Server 2016, but both SPO and SharePoint Server 2016 effectively share the same Genesis block, that being 2013. So we anticipate that upgrades are going to be a lot smoother because there's no fundamental change in kind of that core kernel that really spawned what we have today in respect to the two products, the one in the cloud and the one on-prem. So hopefully upgrades are smooth, and that's another area we're going to be looking for feedback on. In particular, in this release, we definitely want to know what the upgrade experiences are like. We want to know what the scale experiences are like. Then we just want general feedback on what features are going to be, that we're including in the product, and how well those are working. Do they meet expectations? So there's a lot of stuff that we want to be able to see.
So let's turn our attention into features. There have been a number of questions about that, and let's start with sort of the broadest question. What are there features in the preview? Let's start with that are going to be new to us from a user perspective. Are we really going to start yet seeing business value reasons for moving from SharePoint 2010 or 2013 up to 2016, other than, for example, search, which we've talked about?
Okay, so I'll give you a carrot and say yes, but I can't tell you what they are today.
Wow, that's really cool.
So
that's actually surprising to me.
You're gonna see some new things. I'm not gonna tell you more. I'm gonna let you go out next month, deploy, and take a look at them. But there are some cool new things that are unrelated to infrastructure as well that we just can't talk about today. And I know a lot of what we've talked about so far has been kind of rehashing what we've already disclosed at Ignite. I wish I could tell you everything that we're going to do in preview, but we've got a moment set aside for that we want to definitely get you excited for, because we think you're going to be excited about it. So it's the easy answer is it's not all just going to be infrastructure. There's going to be a lot of other stuff that you're going to see.
All right, so the theme for the August preview is deploy and discover, huh? Find it out for ourselves. I can't wait to find out what those features are.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be some. There's definitely going to be some discovery involved in what we're shipping in preview, and much of it you already know because we disclosed it at Ignite and we've talked about it again here. And then the remainder of it's going to be up to you to find and enjoy. For Ryan, do we have a date for the preview? Next month. So August is when we anticipate the preview release for both Cloud Search Service as well as the SharePoint Server 2016 preview. Randall asks about Easter eggs. I don't know. That's something where maybe you have to upload 150 million items and then right-click 2 of them twice. Figure it out. But like I said, there's definitely some cool stuff that's going to make its way in preview as we continue our internal validation before we stabilize, package it up, sign it, and make it available to the world. So.
All right. So then I won't ask you about specific features because clearly you've just said that you won't tell us. So let me take a little bit of a broader swipe here because there's one other big announcement that came out over the last week that I'd like to get your comments on, and that is at the top of the SharePoint stack. We have the father of SharePoint returning, yes? Jeff T.
Yeah, so,
returned.
Yep, Jeff announced on Twitter that he's returned to SharePoint, which is obviously great. SharePoint's, it's important to us. I don't know how much more we can stress how important the SharePoint business is to us, both SharePoint Online as well as SharePoint on-prem. And we're committed to building a great product, be it online or on-prem, and it just keeps getting better and better. So it's definitely something that we're hyper focused on is really our SharePoint business. And I think everybody by now has probably seen Julia's keynote presentation at Ignite, and if you haven't, I encourage you to look at. And I think that definitively states how important SharePoint is to us. And actually, if you watch the keynote overall, you're going to find a lot of inference to SharePoint, not just within Julia's keynote, but just across the board, in the broader context of the W keynotes as well. So, SharePoint important to us, forward. It's important to us to get a great 2016 release, as well as to continue to innovate in SharePoint Online and build great capabilities there. But lastly, we understand that not everybody can just cloud as a wholesale proposition, and that's kind of where first-class hybrid experiences come in, just to pull those together. I know, there's a couple of questions around reporting functionality. We talked a lot at Ignite. Again, if you haven't seen it, I would skip towards the end of the presentation where we demonstrated some of the ways that we're thinking about telemetry in SharePoint Server 2016, because that provides great insight into it as well.
Awesome. Well, we've got a huge amount of questions, and unfortunately, Bill, I know you've got a meeting coming up, so I want to be respectful of your time. We will be back in 2 weeks. Bill, should we just sort of continue this discussion of SharePoint 2016 preview, and then we sort of put off our discussion of customer lockbox, so maybe we'll eventually be able to get back to that in 2 weeks? How does that sound?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. That sounds great. And while I'm in another meeting, I can just kind of hang out for a few minutes and try to answer some of the questions offline in the chat.
Great. So you can chat with us still in text. All right, so we'll keep the lobby going out, open longer than normal, but we'll let Bill get off his webcam. Whoa, my screen just went crazy. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. My screen just went into screensaver mode. So Bill, thank you as always for spending time with us this week, helping us understand what is going to be coming to us and dropping a couple of great little reasons for us to deploy the preview as quickly as possible. Really appreciate your time, Bill. And for all of you guys, we'll be continuing the chat since Bill can do that. And then in 2 weeks, we'll be back with Bill for the next Tech Talk with Bill Baer. Thanks so much, Bill.
Thanks, Dan.